Welcome to Relationship Mastery, a podcast for those who want to learn how to master the art of creating happy, healthy, and loving relationships. Please join me, Adey-Jones, and my co-host, Barry Selby, each Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific for a lively and informative conversation on everything to do with relationships. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again for another chat this week. Hi, Barry. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Del? Another fun topic this week.
I know. Saying what we always I always like during the week, it's like either in my coaching life or my personal life, I'm like, oh, that's something we have to discuss. So This happens to be more inspired by recent observations, let's just put it that way, of how certain people live. And I have family members that live this way, and I also have some friends that live this way. And I noticed that there's a very few people are really, really present, like really in the present moment. The ones I'm talking about today are the ones that live in the past, and then there's other people who live in a future, a future based on fear of what could happen, or fantasy of what could happen, or whatever those things are. But they're not present. The present moment is happening in their lives.
Absolutely.
So we can maybe talk about the futurizing in another show, but for now, I really wanted to focus on this. Are you living in the past? And I'm witnessing it, and I see how immobilizing it is for some people when they literally spend all their energy on regret, on what was, wanting what was back, where it's clearly gone. It doesn't exist anymore. And it's hard. It's not a judgmental thing, but it's painful for me to watch. It's painful for me to see somebody stuck in that cycle, because the way I look at it is, I only have a finite amount of energy to do life. And I am very selective with how I spend that energy. And for me, spending it in regret or wanting things to be the way they were it's just a drain for me. It's an energy drain. And it's not to deny that you don't have a thought that comes into your mind of like what was, and you feel that thought. That's absolutely natural. That's what our mind does. We have a thought, it comes in. But how much we want to grab onto that thought and indulge that thought and munch on that thought and make a big meal of that thought, where we are completely and utterly consumed by this way of thinking. We do have free will over that. I believe anyway, there's a certain amount of free will.
Well, the thing about free will is it implies we're aware we have free will, because some people, because they're so caught up in the past, they're not even aware they have a choice. They think the past is the only place they can live, for some people.
Yeah.
And in fact, something I was aware of also is part of that living in the past is also unwilling to let people live in the present. I've actually been around people who basically, like, and I don't know I can't remember the detail exactly what happened, but I remember being experienced with somebody who I hadn't seen in probably 15 years. They wouldn't let me be myself now. They kept looking at me back then, and they kept trying to hold me back to their old way of being.
Yeah.
It was an interesting experience too. So it was almost like they were trying to drag me away from my reality for their convenience.
Yeah.
So that can be a challenge too, because the thing is, when people live in the past, they have this, I won't say facade, but have this illusion of that's the way it is. So if anybody steps outside of that illusion, it disrupts their own one. So they can do that, but to pull everybody in to their experience, they can stay in that past moment and not move forward.
Yeah, I think you're bringing up, so the way I see it, what you're describing is actually there's a phrase like, you can never be a guru in your own town, in your own hometown, meaning you will always be remembered for the little boy or the little girl that you were, that you will never evolve in those. From people in your past, they don't see your growth, they don't see you having evolved. So I see that as well as what you're talking about, and I agree. It's like, but that's also projection. For me, I can't bear people telling me who I am. It's like, go on, I'm the first one to say, this is me. I know who I am. I know my strengths, my weaknesses, my whatever. But when people project on you and say, no, you're this, and as you say, it could be because maybe you were like that in the past, but they're locking you into that time and space and not seeing you who you are right then in that minute in front of them.
Yeah, but it's for their comfort, their convenience. It's not about reality. It's just about the fact they want to stay, quote, safe in their own space, which is now living in the past.
Yeah.
And again, exactly. I don't want anybody to threaten that for them. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking more like along the lines right now. I'm witnessing, I just, wishing things were what they were. When I'll be specific actually. I live in Malibu. An awful lot of people lost their homes in the fire or were impacted by the fire, not necessarily even lost their homes. And of course, the initial impact is devastating. It's that is life has dealt you a blow.
Yes.
And I will 100% support feeling your feelings, allowing it to come through, not suppressing, not manipulating and changing, but allowing that experience to come through. But what I am witnessing, what is it now? January, February, March, April, May, 4 or 5 months later, is some people are able to navigate the experience with a little more ease and grace than others.
Right.
And not to say that, again, it's no judgment. And I have a lot of compassion for the ones that are struggling more, because I see that there is something they're not understanding. They're not understanding that, this whole, where my teachings come from are the 3 principles of our experience comes through as via our thinking. So the event happens, it impacts us. Now, what we make, the meaning we make of that event is how much we suffer.
Right.
Some people will just see it as, oh my God, life gave me this situation. It's, again, as I've said before, I'm very much whatever happens to us is for our greatest good, even if in the moment it feels like it's not. It is for us, not against us. It's a way of evolving spiritually or emotionally or psychologically. So that's my sort of, when really bad things happen, I can sort of, it lessens the impact on me when I say, somewhere, somehow, this is helping me. I don't know, I can't see it right now, but I trust there's a bigger picture that I don't understand, that this is for my highest good. So when I see people who just keep saying, I just want it the way it was. I just want it the way it was. And that's like a mantra. And I see them so stuck and literally flailing and drowning, not being able to come up for air. It's tough to witness. It's painful to witness. And I, as a coach, you want to help people and give them tools on how to, yes, honor your feelings that you're going through right now, but how to best navigate moving forward with this new reality that you are facing.
Yeah. And another level of that, which is about relationship-centric type thing, is when, because I've worked sometimes with people who've lost their partners, like the partner died, which is not worse than they're losing the partner because they left them, sort of thing. But that experience of grief can sometimes be caught up in the denial of it even happening. And so there's a part of them that really would almost wish they could go back, because either one, they miss them so much, or two, there's regrets they didn't do, say, handle certain things when they could have done back then, which they can't do now. And there's this denial that they have to move on without them, because they feel like, if only I could go back, if only I could, this sort of drive that keeps them trapped in this liminal space in between there and now. And so a lot of my work with people going through grief is really have them come to terms with the fact that they are now where they are, because it's definitely a challenge, absolutely, where the stuckness or the attachment is a better word to what happened is so overwhelming they can't live in reality, frankly, and it's just distressing to watch. And absolutely, as I agree with you, to be as compassionate as we are, there's a limit to how much we can do that without burning ourselves up in that same place. So we've got to be able to take care of ourselves if we're close, not even as a coach, but as a friend, where we want to, like, we have to say, I can't be here for this. I need to step away or move away to take care of myself, because what you're choosing to do is not constructive.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that is a very interesting subject too, especially for somebody that can totally identify with being a codependent and being this sort of bottomless pit of I'm there for you, I'm there for you, and then at some point you're like, am I drowning too now?
Right.
You know, do I have to actually put myself first in this situation, which is pretty hard for me, I will admit. I'm getting better, but it's still hard for me. But you bring up a really interesting point about living in the past. When two points I want to make, as if I remember them. I always do this. I remember one and then the other one. But
Yep.
one is, we do tend to take in the situation of losing a partner, losing a spouse or a long-term partnership or any relationship. And that regret of what you didn't do or what you might have said or didn't say. I always tell myself that if somebody has passed on, they're still here. They still see what you're going through. They still understand that you love and care and wish you had said something in this dimension of life. So it doesn't mean that you missed your chance. They're never going to know how you felt, and they do know. They know. So that's very comforting to me. That if something wasn't, I might actually bring up a situation. My mother once said to me, because as most of you know, I grew up without a father. I met him for the first time when I was 30. And then I realized it was just too painful for his family for me to stay in contact with him. So I achieved what I needed to achieve, which was to meet him, and then I let it go. And my mother years later kept saying to me, like something like, well, don't you want to reach out to your father again? And don't you want to? And I was like, no, it's okay. She goes, what if he dies? I said, Mum, when he dies, he'll get it much clearer than he's getting it while he's on this earth.
It's true enough. Yeah.
So, and I really mean that. I mean, I think once we pass, we have much more clarity about our human condition and situation. So that was one. But the other one is, again, when we have maybe lost a partner, but to either death or to ending of a relationship, we sometimes fictionalize that person, who they were, what the relationship was. And we sort of create this picture of perfection that then the present day can never match up to, or the present day relationship can't match up to.
Yeah, we almost make it into a fairy tale where it's almost perfect and nothing could change it. And it's true. It's a delusion, basically, because it's not reality. And that is the challenge, because from the perspective, no, reality can never be equal to that, never be good enough to that. But if you can bring yourself into the present, you might discover that life is actually better now than it was. But we are caught up to that attachment, codependency, as you put it, and that attached desire to have something you can no longer have can become so overwhelming that nothing can come close to the feeling. You don't even have the feeling because you're hoping for it and reaching for it and attempting to get it. But at the same time, you're not accepting the reality is what it is. And so it can never come up. It never can equal or become as good as that place. It's true. And so the challenge is sometimes that cold, hard face of reality is the only way through. But once you accept what is, it can be so freeing. But it's not easy to convince somebody of that when they're stuck in the past, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a really interesting one. It's I mean, it goes hand in hand with regret. It's like if I'd only made this choice instead of that choice. And when I hear people say that, I'm just thinking, you made a choice. It's you literally you never know what. I mean, I do believe that life is a series of choices. I do believe in an element of fate. I think certain things come into our lives that we before we come into this, earthly form, that we have some sort of spiritual do list, for want of a better word, of what we need to work on and what will help us grow the most in that area. So I do believe there's a certain amount of fate. Maybe fate's not the right word, but anyway, that things happen to us for a reason. But there are a series of events that we constantly have choices, and we could go down that path or that path, and we make a choice, and that leads to another path and another path and another path. So to go back all the way back and go, if I just hadn't have done that, it's like you do realize that if you've made the other choice, you know, you could even end up in the same place. Who knows? I mean, it's just such a mind f. I'll put it that way. To play that game of what if I hadn't done that? What if I had stayed there? What if I hadn't moved? What if, you know? And it's just, to me, again, as I say, it's a it's a form of self torture. It has no purpose.
Well, yes, and because there's another thing to this too, which hit me, is that there's part of us in a lot of ways, at least a human need in a way, is to be around things that are familiar. And for some people, to be like go back to that experience they had because it was familiar and comfortable, versus being in the unknown of what's possible. And so a lot of people, you know, they'd rather stay, even though it's painful, and even though it's not even really available anymore because it's now in the past. We want to stay like where we can feel familiar and comfortable, rather than be in the present moment where everything's unknown and we don't know what's going to happen. So the uncertainty can be so scary that we'll revert back to an older, familiar, and non-existent past that isn't there anymore. But that's what we try to do to attempt to feel safe.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I definitely see that. And again, I don't want to come across as judgmental at all. It's not. It's more just yeah. It just, I don't know. It just, for me, I think I'm such a okay, come on, all right then, let's move on, whatever it is. You
Yep.
know, that energy that I just feel like as I said, I have a. I mean, I mean, I could argue with myself now. I think we do have unlimited energy and potential and possibility, but at the same time, in the human form, knowing how much energy I have to give in certain areas of my life, I'm selective with, do I really want to spend it on something that's futile, like trying
Yeah.
to live in the past? And again, I want to clarify here too that I'm not saying, you know, having regrets is a healthy thing. You know, having done something that caused either someone else harm or yourself harm, to regret that action, I think is very healthy, really important. And it's important to acknowledge and to learn from. But when we still use it to beat ourselves up years and years later, and it's not for any good, it's actually just for harm, that's when I would challenge that.
Yeah, because the things you want to learn from the lessons, you don't have to keep doing it. Yeah, absolutely what you're saying. So I'm not sorry to say the word is regret, but certainly owning up to or being responsible for what we did, so we can say, you know, I can change that now going forward. And so there's a lesson learned, so it's not keep repeating the same mistake. The thing is that at the same time, what so many people do this though, where they don't learn the lesson and they keep repeating the same thing again and again. And it is challenging to watch. Even again, it's compassionate, but I recognize also that some people don't know that it's okay to let go of something and to be in the unknowing and to be willing to even to forgive themselves. To say, you know what, I don't know why I didn't do what I wanted to do. I did it the wrong way, but I let myself off the hook so I can move forward free of it. But that seems to be for the advanced soul, so to speak. It's somebody who chooses it, who's done some work or has worked with one of us, sort of thing, who's already got the guidance, because most people don't even know this is possible for them. They feel like they've got to carry that big baggage over their shoulder of all the stuff they've made mistakes on in the past, and they can't change it. It's like, yes, you can.
Yeah, or they feel so guilty, they don't feel they're entitled to be happy and to move on from it. They feel that they do need to, it's like self-flagellation. It's like, you know, I'm not going to live life fully because you know, and maybe you did do something that was incredibly painful and harmful to another human being, but you know, are you is this self-flagellation helping anybody at this point? Maybe take that energy and do something. You don't have to declare what it is, but to make the world a better place. That actually, whatever you may have done that you have incredible regret about, you're righting that wrong by now making sure that you're doing good deeds in the world or something like that.
The challenge is that there's a it's the feeling that that's what it is. It's the feeling that they don't deserve to have what they want because they have this feeling like, I made a mistake so bad, I don't deserve to have this. That sort of wiring that we put installed. And of course, the ego-driven people don't care about that, but most of the human people who have hearts and caring and concern, sometimes that feeling like, you know, I messed up so badly, I don't deserve to have what I want. And that becomes a piece of wiring goes underneath the rest of their lives sometimes. So it's so much. I mean, as you said earlier, it's like that self-flagellation. It's self-inflicted. If only people were willing to say, you know what, I don't need to carry that weight anymore. It's okay to be free from this, to step into the unknown and trust I'll be okay. But a lot of people don't know how to do that. They sort of keep pulling back into the old way of being, you know?
Yeah. And again, it's not linear, you know, the moving forward. It's not like, okay, this happened, that's in the past, won't ever revisit it, won't let myself revisit it. It's not that. It's not muscling it. It's just accepting that as human beings, you know, thoughts will drift through our minds, that, you know, the past will revisit us. Again, it's the meaning we make of it and how long we want to grab hold of it and gnaw on it and have it stay very stuck in that past, preventing us from naturally progressing forward with healing and new insights and lessons learned and whatever it is, but just more of a present, being present, but with the ability to move forward as life is happening in the moment.
Yeah.
Oh, the past doesn't exist, the future doesn't exist, it's all up in here. So, you know, it's being present to what is right now. What can I do right now? What is the situation I'm in? What can I do to help myself and help others? Because often when we are helping others, as we both know very, very clearly, it does get you out of your own situation.
Absolutely.
I was 100% when, you know, the fires were happening, by showing up at the donation center every single day. It was selfish as well. It was 100%, you know, when I could, it was to take my mind off the impact that I was feeling from the fires. I didn't lose my home, but my business suffered, not my coaching business, and separate business suffered terribly. So it was a way to be self-preserve, to give to others, knowing that I had skills as a coach to help people. Also, having been a former stylist, costume designer, it was great fun dressing people and having people look amazing that had just lost everything. So it was very rewarding, challenging and rewarding at the same time. But boy, does it get you out of your own space when you're serving others. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting place to be, because living in the moment is one of the biggest gifts we give ourselves. And it does take effort, because it's so easy, because our thoughts and our minds are so busy, that we get pulled out of center and get pulled into things that happen, things that might happen, which we put some in another episode. But the understanding that is that it's almost like having a pendulum that keeps swinging back and forward. It doesn't stay centered. Yeah, but when we can do that, and frankly, if you do things like, you know, meditation, prayer, even exercise, can do things to bring you present, that can help to free you from all those attachments to what happened before, so you can be free to live in the present. Because when you can do that, it's amazing how good it is. When you,
and you know, we have this internal GPS system that is giving us constant feedback every second of the day as to where we are at. And if we pay attention to our feelings, our feelings will let us know if we're in the past, in the present, or in the future. I always say, if I'm feeling sad, it's because I'm in the past. I'm in regret, or I'm mourning. So if I'm feeling sad, I'm mourning. If I'm feeling fearful, anxious, fearful, I know that I'm speeding up and going ahead. So I'm very aware of those emotions. If I start to feel like depressed or something, I'm like, well, you must be. Even if it's unconscious, you're living in some past experience, in some sort of sadness. And again, the anxiety and the fear is always when I start running ahead of myself and imagining a future that we all know 90-something% is never going to happen. You know, I'm going to end up a bag lady under the bridge. You know, it doesn't matter how many times my two children tell me, no, Mum, you're going to come and live with us. It's still a fear that I won't be able to take care of myself when I'm older. And it's an irrational fear. I mean, it's clearly irrational. I'll be fine. But
right.
It's
but that's another episode, because we're talking about the past this episode.
yeah, That's right. Next week we'll be doing the future.
Clearly, we're already leading into it because it's in the future.
But let's just think. So any other? Well, yeah. Again, that when we are in the past, we are. There's that funny phrase or something like, you know, you're when you're in the past, you're missing the gift of the present. Literally, like the right now is a present. It's a gift. It's something that that so much of life we are missing by listening to our busy minds, by being in this space of historical fiction of what it was.
Or regret, or attachment, all those different things that we use to connect us to what has already happened. Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing yet understandable because we have such powerful minds. We can do so many things, and one of those things is we can time travel. So we time travel to the past oftentimes because that's one thing about the past, which is good, is that it can't be changed. In some ways, it's actually a good thing because you can go back and go, you know what, it's safe because we go in the future, everything's changeable. And some people are very afraid of change. So if you live in the past, you're almost safe because you know what is and what happened, and that's the way it is. The reality is we know in our work, you can heal the past so you don't have the same feelings about the past. So it does change the past that way.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Yeah, just data points that some people think the past is static, so it's safer to be there than to live in the present or the future, where it's all changeable. But yeah, we know it means that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's really, as you were saying that, I was thinking, well, hang on a minute. It's, story we told ourselves about the past. It was just a story that we made up about the past. We can make up many, many different stories about the past.
Absolutely. Yes.
In a way, we can challenge our thinking about the past. Put it that way. If we're telling ourselves a story about the past that was like, they didn't love me, they hated me, they this, and we're causing ourselves pain by believing that, we can challenge that thought and just say, hey, you know what, they did the best they could. And they could have loved us, but they just didn't show us in a way that felt loving. Maybe they were riddled with fear, or maybe they were something. But for example, again, visiting, the situation with my father, I made that mean that I was unlovable. But if he could see me every day and not even say hello to me or acknowledge me, must have meant I was unlovable. And it took me into adulthood to ever think for a second, and it took me meeting him at 30 for me to actually go, oh, he wasn't even really thinking about me. He was so into his own world and I just didn't, but it had no bearing on who I was as a child. It didn't mean I wasn't lovable. It just meant that he didn't have the capacity to have those fatherly feelings. It wasn't, but yeah, it was like, it was unbelievable to me that it took me to being an adult to be able to look back and rewrite history in a way, or see it in a different way, not rewrite it. The circumstances were the same. He still, abandoned us and ignored us, but it doesn't mean the meaning I made out of it, I was able to shift, that it wasn't so painful and so used against me to make me this, bad, inadequate child.
Right.
I was able to see it with a little bit more of a looseness to, hey, there's a lot more to that story than it appeared to you as a small child. So yes, we can look at the past, we can reframe it, we just don't get stuck there.
Exactly. No point living there, doesn't work. We live in the present.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. That was another great conversation, Barry. So maybe next week we will talk about futurizing. Saber-toothed tiger. Let's just wait.
You have to stay tuned to that one when we share it. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, have a wonderful week, everybody. Thank you again, Barry.
Thank you. That was a conversation. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
We trust you enjoyed this episode and invite you to share this with your friends and loved ones. In fact, please subscribe to our Relationship Mastery podcast. That way you'll get each new episode fresh and shiny as soon as it is released. We'd love to hear from you as well. So go ahead and enter your questions and comments at relationshipmastery.show. Take good care. We will connect with you in our next episode of Relationship Mastery.